the early 1500s, the Catholic Church was increasingly powerful all over Europe. Its churches, monasteries, and convents stretched from Ireland to Sicily. It was rich beyond measure and had more power than kings. However, some people began to see it as a symbol of the world rather than of God, Martin Luther included. It all started in 1506, when Pope Julius II began construction on a new shrine to St. Peter, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome.
Julius building St. Peter's from scratch was part of establishing his legacy.
However, when Pope Julius II died in 1513, the project was continued by Pope Leo X. This new pope was profoundly greedy. He used up all the church's money soon after taking the papal throne. To regain this money, Pope Leo X turned to the selling of indulgences. An indulgence was simply a piece of paper that the commonalty could buy that was said to gain them entrance into heaven. A number of men were hired to sell these indulgences, the most profitable of which was a man named Johann Tetzel. He was known for catchy slogans and expressions such as soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs." The Catholic Church had become progressively corrupt and repressive. Martin Luther, who had devoted his life to the Church by becoming a monk, was greatly upset by this.
It happened in the year 1517 that a preaching monk called Johann Tetzel, a great ranter, made his appearance. This same Tetzel now went around with indulgences, selling grace for money as dearly or as cheaply as he could, to the best of his ability.
Luther strongly believed that the selling of indulgences went against the Word of God, so he decided to take action. On October 31st of 1517, he wrote out the 95 Theses. This was simply a list of ways in which Luther felt the Catholic Church had gone astray.
95 criticisms, 95 statements criticizing the Roman Catholic Church.
In particular, Luther attacked indulgences.
Therefore, those preachers of indulgences are in error, who say that by the Pope's indulgences a man is freed from every penalty and saved. Christians are to be taught that he who gives to the poor or lends to the needy does a better work than buying pardons.
He also berated the Church's relation to the economy.
Why does not the Pope, whose wealth it is today greater than the riches of the richest, build just this one church of St. Peter with his own money, rather than the money of the poor believers?
Luther then nailed his theses to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church. This was a simple form of communication, but 60 years earlier, a man named Johannes Gutenberg had fabricated the printing press. For the first time in history, documents could be produced in mass. Luther had a powerful weapon at hand. His 95 Theses were copied and spread all over Germany.
Luther's criticisms reached far more people far more quickly than any reform movement had been able to before.
So my theses against Tetzel's articles, which you can now see in print, were published. They went throughout the whole of Germany in a fortnight, for the whole world complained about indulgences, and particularly Tetzel's articles.
They were wildly popular among the people. However, the Catholic Church was outraged. Pope Leo X demanded that Luther disown the 95 Theses, but he refused. The more the Church tried to stop Luther, the more sure he became that he was doing the right thing. Luther began to produce small, informative pamphlets explaining his convictions. They were printed and reprinted and spread across Europe. The people liked what Luther had to say. They were tired of being told what to do by the tyrannical Catholic Church. Luther argued that ordinary Christians could make a difference. He fought for individual freedom. His ideas became much more radical than he ever intended them to be.
He was a stunningly effective propagandist.
Other reformers, such as John Calvin, followed in his footsteps. New Reformed Protestant churches cropped up all over Europe. The reformers eventually disagreed and divided, creating many different denominations of Protestantism. There were now Lutherans, Anglicans, Baptists, Congregationalists, Methodists, and Presbyterians. There is no doubt that the Protestant Reformation was a religious change. However, many people don't realize that it was also a political, economic, and social change.
The Protestant Reformation was far more than simply a religious change. Luther's initial goals were very focused on religious concerns, but because the Catholic Church was the Catholic Church and Christian ideas were so tied into family, law, ideas about government, so much of European culture, any major religious change at that time period was inevitably also an economic, social, and political change. And the Reformation shapes all of those different aspects of European society in many different ways.
The Catholic Church was so involved in everyday life that when the Reformers attacked it, just about everyone and everything was affected. Communities could reorganize themselves. Things that were initially controlled by the Church, such as education and social discipline, could be redesigned. Luther also brought about a new idea: individual conscience. Without the Church's involvement, people had freedom. They had economic freedom, religious freedom, and social freedom. The very ideals that the U.S. Constitution is centered around. However, it took a long time to get where we are today. During the Reformation, there was intolerance everywhere. As new religious groups cropped up, there was more and more persecution. To escape this harassment, many members of these congregations sought refuge in the American colonies. The Protestant Reformation helped shape the ideals of the U.S. Constitution, and it influenced early American church organization.
It is a turning point in history, not just because it's so important for shaping the many different ways that Christianity develops from then, but it is one of the factors that opens up new ways in Western European and then North American culture of talking about authority more generally and of understanding how the world works.
The Protestant Reformation is still affecting us today. Its influence can be found all over our daily lives. It can be found in weddings, funerals, and christenings. There are around 160 million Protestants in the U.S., and more than 590 million around the world.